let's talk about Resident Evil.
Resident Evil
Village.
Eight-lidge.
V8.
Yeah.
V8-lidge.
V8.
V8.
4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Resident Evil. This Sunday. Resident Evil.
Yes. Guys, I think it's you'll find
Resident
it's,
Evil Ford, the high point so far of the series.
I think you'll find it's actually called Biohazard. Biohazard Village.
Drivo has a
Bio Holden.
It's like Hazard Course or something like that, like a type of destruction derby thing.
The hazard perception test.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
there
is
we
what
go.
I'm thinking of.
There we
Yeah,
go.
biohazard
Things-
perception
Biohazard-
test.
Yeah, the thing to get your L plates
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you're 16.
Yes.
Yeah.
Biohazard Village is a terrible name. That makes it sound like a bad game.
I guess so.
Biohazard Village.
Is that what it's called in Japan still? It must be.
It
I
might,
guess, yeah.
Because
Sounds
the
like
last
a
one was
student film or something. Biohazard Village.
even though it's probably meant to be Biohazard Village, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because this isn't like I don't like the name Resident Evil Village either. I think Village is a silly word for this. But Resident Evil 8 is the better version of the name for the most recent Resident Evil game, which is out on everything other than the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
It is a very good Resident Evil game.
Yes.
End of review.
Yeah.
Oh.
For the most
I
part.
didn't get to say anything.
Nah, too bad. Should have gotten in there.
I guess I
Me
got
and my
to
5 dicks
hate
just
on-
jumped in there first.
hate on Biohazard Village.
Yeah, for the most part, I think I agree. I probably... Well, yeah, so we're going to do pretty general stuff, and then we're going to get a bit spoilery
Yeah.
with it, because we've all finished it, which I can't
Yeah.
remember the last time we all finished a game before the ep.
Yeah.
Last of Us, I guess.
Last of Us
at some
2,
point. But I think
probably.
I'd only finished that in the first episode
In the
we
first
did.
week.
Yeah, true.
Because it's about 10 hours long. It is it's a linear game.
I do really like that about these games that, like, yeah, not everything you get needs to be, like with Returnal, basically endless if you
Yeah.
want it to be, or a 100-hour JRPG.
Yes.
I love when something like this comes along that just slots in and it'll take maybe a week to get through.
Well, and when you're done, this isn't a spoiler, you can replay the story with the weapons that you unlocked and that sort of thing. There's a mercenaries mode, which has been some of the other ones that I've been messing with a bit too, and we'll talk about later. But
I think that's always been their kind of intent with these games, is
Yeah.
that they're not incredibly long to finish, and they really build them to... Because you get these completion points things, and this has been in pretty much all of them, I think, right? Where you then can unlock unlimited ammo and stuff. So you do like multiple runs on it, and then I think hypothetically you could have one final run where you have every gun with unlimited ammo, and you can just really sail through the game if you want.
So same thing again. This is a Resident Evil game completely. It is Resident Evil 7 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And way more so than I was expecting, where, in the lead up to it, they were going like, we're kind of looking at 4 again and kind of trying to do something like that. It absolutely isn't anywhere near as good as that, I don't think, in terms of the combat.
Right.
Which I think is weirdly the part of this game that I found to be the weakest link in the chain. Because... And the reason I bring up the replaying thing in the mercenaries mode and everything, because it's not fun to shoot these enemies generally. Because the only thing they do is sway left and right really far. They do these big, shuffly kind of dodging so you can't get a headshot type moves. And that's kind of all they do. And every different type of enemy is kind of all they do. And it's a little boring after a point, just waiting for them to do their big step hugely to the left, clap 2 times, slide to the right, jump 2 times. How does that dance go? God, I wish I could have remembered it. But you get the idea.
Yeah. I saw a thing in a...
Doing the fucking hokey pokey.
Yeah. I saw a thing in a review in the lead up that said, there's a much more... a broad range of enemies than there was in... That was a criticism that people had of 7, that there was really only the one enemy type.
Yeah, right.
And that is true aesthetically, but in terms of how they function, they're sort of... There isn't.
You got... I don't think this... Again, you got 3 sizes of Wolfman, and you got a zombie.
Yeah.
There's some birds.
And some birds and some bosses.
Yeah.
The birds are pretty cool.
They're fine.
Yeah. Gargoyles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're like gargoyle-y things. If you get a sniper rifle, and they are just easy to snipe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was a little That's really the only part of the game that kind of disappointed me. It's not terrible, but it's like 7 but expanded, and it's so going from the expectation of it's 4 but in first person to it's 7 but there's 2 more enemies.
Right.
Was a little...
I sort of found it a bit like the in the very, very beginning where you don't have much ammo and your guns aren't very powerful yet. I found the enemies kind of annoying because you feel very overpowered. Right. And the first maybe 2 hours, I wasn't really sure.
Overpowered by them, not
overpowered by them. Yeah, sorry. In the first couple of hours, I wasn't really sure if I liked this because it does take. It's very cutscene-y at the start. Yeah. It sort of drops you into the village and you sort of walk around a bit and there's more cutscene, and it does take a little while until it just drops you into a bit of classic Resident Evil where you're in a castle and you're just looking around for keys and all that kind of stuff. It does take a couple of hours to get to that point. So to begin with, I sort of found the combat like just frustratingly hard and a bit unfair, but then you pretty quickly upgrade your weapons and then it is just... You can take things out very quickly. Yeah. And there's sort of no in between, I found. Like for me, it went from annoyingly tough to just fun, but a piece of piss.
Because you know exactly what they're going to do. There's none of the because they're holding swords, and sometimes if you shoot them, they'll drop the sword, but it never feels like you're aiming at their hand to make them drop the sword or the axe like it was in 4, and not to compare, but they're the same series, so of course you're going to compare them.
Yeah.
But like... It doesn't feel like there's any like interactivity or whatever with it. You're doing the same action, like you're running backwards a little bit so that you've got a bit of space.
Yeah.
You are shooting sort of just center mass, trying to get a headshot at them while they bob and weave, and you're repeating that for every single encounter that there is in the game.
And once you get the shotgun, it's like boom, boom. It's 2 shots and they're done.
Well,
but let's talk. So. Ben, you've also finished this.
Yeah.
And you were saying, I said, is this the first Resident Evil game you finished? And you said, not only that, it's the first one I've played more than an hour of.
Yeah. So I must have probably tried 1 or 2, like actually back in the day.
Yeah.
And didn't like them, found them too scary, didn't like the fixed camera stuff, or, a lot of the sort of tropes of the series.
Yeah.
At least early games. I was like, I'm not into this.
Yeah. You don't do well with horror stuff.
Yeah, but I also just didn't like the aesthetic. I never was hugely into zombies, really.
You're talking still back in the day.
Back in the day, yeah.
PS1, yeah.
And then I tried 7 last year, I think.
Right.
And was like, this is cool. I like the presentation of this. The setting is cool. Found it like terrifying and only got through an hour or so, maybe. Yeah. Sort of when... you first start getting attacked, really.
When
and
Jack's chasing you around.
Pretty much, yeah. But it was like, okay, this is cool. Like, it's such a well-done horror movie of a game that, that's the reason I'm not wanting to play it more.
Yeah.
The big smart thing that I think they've taken from that, and I think we'll talk more about the visuals in a moment, but, like, I don't think that the setting or characters of this are quite as compelling as 7, I would say.
No, because they're kind of the same thing again, but European.
Just a bit less, but I think... This
is the Deuce Bigelow European gigolo to the original Deuce Bigelow, where you're like, we've seen the wackiness that can happen to you when you're a gigolo, and we absolutely loved it. And now we're just seeing the same thing, but in Amsterdam, and I'm not so sure that Deuce is living up to the first movie.
But the one smart thing that I think they've kept is that what made 7... I think scary in a new way for the series was having these antagonists that are a bit more sentient than just the zombies and that are talking to you and taunting you, and in it sort of being a real person who's gone fucking mental as opposed to just this monster that's grunting at you. And I think that's been a wise decision to just transplant that over rather than just be in a village with just wordless stuff happening the whole time.
Especially with the last Resident Evil game was the 3 remake, with you've got big grunty nemesis coming after you.
And that's all that happens, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But yeah, so my expectations were probably going to be like that one I tried last year but couldn't really sink my teeth into.
Yeah.
And the start is like, it's very tense, it's very difficult, you don't have a lot of weapons or resources or anything. But yeah, like you guys said, pretty quickly it's just like, it's an action game from this point on. It's not a survival horror game, it's not just a horror game. Yeah. It's an action game in a horror setting. And I loved it. I actually found it playing like BioShock, which, the combat...
It's actually called Biohazard.
BioShock Village.
BioShock here was called Shock.
Yeah.
My favourite Pauly Shore movie is Resident Evil Dome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Resident
Dome, yeah. It played like BioShock. It was like...
I like Encino Man, which is in Japan called Encino Doki Panic.
yeah.
Doki.
Yeah.
I was getting confused with Doki Doki Literature Club, and I was like, no, that can't have been what the Mario game was
Insoki
called.
Panic.
and Doki Panic.
Yeah.
Fucking hell. But Mario isn't man anyway. I'm thinking of Mega Man.
Yeah.
Encino Man is called Rock Man in Japan.
There we
Yeah,
go.
Rock
There we
Man.
go.
Fuck.
Which kind of works still for
I
Encino
was
Man.
yawning for the first 10 minutes. I'm not on today. I'm really struggling with today.
I had no issues with the combat. Like, it was simple, but it was just... It's like... Yeah, it's an obstacle to get past. It's not a combat-focused game in my mind.
The fact that it is an action game this time, though, turns it kind of into that.
Yeah, but I think like the same as BioShock, especially BioShock Infinite, which I know a lot of people didn't like the combat in specifically.
Right.
I think it's a very good comparison for me, having played Infinite and no other Resident Evil game.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, the combat's there to be an obstacle. It's very simplistic, but I found it satisfying and rewarding. But yeah, it's mainly there to slow you down going through a fun story in a really interesting setting. And yeah, like I haven't played Resident Evil 4, so I don't get really the comparisons there of sort of the gothic horror style. But as someone who likes the kind of movies that would be compared to Village, I loved the setting. I loved it. Loved the characters. I loved the way it played with those tropes and introduced some more.
Yeah.
Visually is fucking stunning.
It looks so good.
And the performances were all cool as well. My issues really only were with where the plot goes, because it goes in a fucking ridiculous direction.
That's the Resident Evil part. That is that. We'll talk about that. We're going to do like spoilery stuff at the end of this as well, because we've all finished it.
I didn't mind the combat all that much, even though I didn't really love it. But I think definitely for my personal tastes, and this is sort of not really spoiler, but I guess maybe verging on it, the kind of balance of sort of actiony stuff versus puzzly Resident Evil stuff. For my personal taste, I probably would have rathered 10 to 15% more of just the sort of being in a house and doing all the puzzle solving kind of stuff.
Right.
I wouldn't have minded maybe like one more mansion or something to explore at the expense of the very action focused back half of this.
I agree with that, just because, the reason I bring the action stuff up, like the guns feel good to shoot and the enemies feel good to shoot and everything, but it just is really simplistic in a way that the series has been better than before. And when they're making those comparisons to 4, I don't know if they're making it just because they're like, we're in Europe again.
Yeah, I think so.
It's a bit deliberate because they do that, and also the other big thing that I really liked is that they bring back the merchant.
Right.
Well, not the same merchant, but the concept of a merchant, which wasn't in 7 and was a big thing in 4.
Yeah.
And the merchant in this kind of, he's got like a little Easter eggy thing where he references the catchphrase of the merchant in 4.
Right.
So I think kind of doing those things
Shagadelic,
is
baby.
I think that's pretty deliberate, like they kind of
absolutely.
are going for that feel again, and he's a great character. Like I really like him, and he's the weird sort of fact that he just is able to kind of pop up anywhere.
Yeah,
he's
that
this
was
kind
sick.
of big fat guy that pops out of a cupboard, basically.
We'll get into some spoiler stuff with him later as well. Definitely it is fine the whole way through, but just like a slight disappointment from the peaks of the series.
Right.
By the end, there's some enemies that are slightly more interesting to fight as well,
Yeah.
because they change things up a little bit.
But it kind of is strange because it feels like I would agree that it feels like they haven't really prioritized this as a combat heavy game, that then in the back end of it, they are really leaning into it.
Because then the mercenaries mode that you unlock after you're done is all combat. It's like an arcadey thing, and have either of you messed with that at all?
No.
I've watched some footage of it,
Right.
but I haven't played it yet.
It's pretty fun,
Right.
And they throw lots and lots of enemies at you to sort of so you're like doing a time rush thing, and it's you get more time if you kill enemies, you get more points for it. So you're trying to balance up how long things are taking you before you go to the exit versus how many points you can gain by staying there. And you're like gathering resources and stuff between different rounds, and it's quite fun. I enjoy it, but it does also highlight how sort of stiff and not as dynamic or whatever. Like, it's not as environment based the combat as it has been in like 4 and stuff. I found that loop of run away, turn around, shoot, run away, turn around, shoot, just a little draining by the end.
Yeah.
Right.
But the reason I bring this up first is because every other aspect of the game is super fun.
Yeah.
It looks fantastic. The sound and everything is spot on. The environments are realized very well.
The environmental design in these games is always like some of the best. Of just like you walk into a shack and you just immediately the first thing that you see, your first like view of this room gives you everything about what's going on here. There'll be like a bed where the blankets are all kind of tossed off, and then there's like a scraping of blood across the floor. There's like
usually it doesn't know what's in the blankets.
Whoa. All right.
You know, there'll be like
penises. It takes forever. I'm like,
a knocked over thing of milk.
look like Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins when I'm trying to.
Jesus Christ. I'm not really on today. Anyway, here's me miming Dick Van Dyke whacking off.
I think that speaks for itself.
Yeah, exactly. I'm correct.
But yeah, just the amount of just little details that are in these like houses that you stumble across, where you just get this immediate picture of kind of what's happened here while still being mysterious. Like they just are so good at loading these environments with details and making them feel so believable and not video gamey, not just like someone's gone, yep, table here, that'll do. Like
detail is definitely the thing in this, because you're in that first person perspective too, and it's a very intense close up one as well. It's like more focused in than a lot of games. You can see every little bit and piece of every environment. It really works. It does that thing I love where at the start of the game you're at a vantage point where you can see everywhere you're going to go throughout the game, which is fucking cool. I remember making a note of it at the time, going like, well, there's a big windmill over there. I better go to the big windmill.
Yes.
Right.
And you do. I went there. I churned a bit of butter. It was great fun.
I think it's not just the like specific like room-based design. The level design, like the quote-unquote, because it's like, you know, you have the village and a bunch of other areas.
Yeah.
But the village especially, it sort of morphs and changes throughout the game, but it does have a specific layout that unlocks a la Castlevania or something like that.
Kinda, yeah.
Bits and pieces, you know, you go around the back and unlock a door that, you know, it unfolds itself.
Yeah.
Despite
being, you know, like a series of like 8 houses.
And it all pans down to it's essentially the red key you need to find.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, some European village version of a red key, but it works.
Yes.
You get in, and then you can get into like the back part of a house, which means that you can get like this new gun or this new upgrade for the gun or whatever it is. There's a bit, maybe I think 2/3 of the way through, where there's not really time progression, but it does. There's a bit where I think after you've come out of maybe the second or third, so basically you're Ethan Winters from
dog shit character, by
dog
the
shit
way.
So
yeah.
bad.
He is so far and away the absolute worst part of this game.
Yeah.
For a series that is already known for some pretty bad writing at times, his dialogue in particular is, and beyond just him being a dumb character, it's just awful. Like the number
He
of
seems
times,
like a fuckhead.
Yeah.
but I don't even necessarily know if that's like a deliberate choice or if it's just like the number of times he's just walking around going, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
It's like, it really irritating. I'm fine with the campiness of it, but this wasn't campy. This was just lazy with him going like,
I think so.
oh, this is fucked up. It's just like the
What
most...
just happened?
Yeah.
What do you mean what just happened?
Yeah.
I have the context for this.
Yes.
How do you not? Were you not paying attention earlier?
It's insane.
Because 90% of his thing, the story is in basic, your daughter is missing. She's in this village somewhere. Baby daughter, little baby daughter.
Yep.
She's been taken. She's in this village. And that means that 90% of what the main character who you're playing as says throughout the game is like, give me back my daughter, you fucking bitch.
Yes.
And he's just like, he's really got an attitude about it that like, I get your daughter's missing, but there's no need for the casual sexism, my friend.
It's that and just, the absolute stupidity. Like,
he just seems like a dumbass,
he's
right?
just had his eyes closed for an entire scene.
Yeah.
And then he looks back and he's like, wait, what was that thing? It's like, it was a big wolf.
Yeah.
You know, like...
Whoa. am I at a Starbucks here? What's going? Like, he just seems like this idiot American dude who fucking is way out of his depth.
Yeah.
And it makes it harder to get attached to the story, the main story of the game.
I think because he's trying to save a baby, I was like, yeah, yes, this guy is a fucking idiot, but
Yeah.
I'm still completely attached to the motivation. I'm not taken out of the story, or my immersion is not broken by him being a fuckhead.
It annoyed me, but yeah, I suppose
Right.
not. Because there's some stuff that happens. We'll talk about it in the spoiler thing.
To be honest, it didn't even really bother me as him being an idiot. It honestly, to me, read more like bad, just lazy writing.
Right. That's fair.
If you read it as a deliberate stylistic choice of like, hey, you're this guy who's like a fucking bonehead and he's trying to save his kid, it's like that I could sort of almost get behind. Like I could get over that because it'd be like, well, that's what they've decided to. That's the story they've decided to tell. That's the character they've decided to put you in control of. And I didn't really find too much of that with him in 7.
Right.
Is the other thing. With this, it was just like he pipes up all the time, and it is just this absolute nothing dialogue.
Right.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
a dumb guy going like, I don't get what's happening. It's like, that's at least something if you do it, if you write
Yes.
it in an eloquent way. But it's literally him going like, oh, this is so fucked up. Just
Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
Do you know
it
what?
just- yeah.
Fuck, they recorded a lot of panting.
Yeah.
Yes.
He is constantly panting. If you're wearing headphones, the whole time you're playing this game, someone is breathing in your ear, and
Yeah.
that did, when I noticed it, become a little annoying. Weirdly,
Yeah. No,
because it's even when you're just walking slowly, standing still. He's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm at a scary castle."
I mean, that's it, right? It's
Yeah.
trying to make you feel scared
Legit.
by association.
Yeah.
Boy.
Oh, what I was about to say
Scared as a
before.
wet willy.
The
12 wet willies that I've got.
about 2/3 of the way through the game when you
Yes.
come in from the it's a village with basically 4 kind of
Places to
castles or
visit.
places to visit
Yeah.
around it that then
Yeah.
when you complete them kind of unlock different things.
Yeah.
And when you come out of, I think it's maybe the 3rd one, there's been like a slight shift where the sun is now out a bit more than it was before, and just the way that the light hitting the snow looks. I mean, we all played on the PS5,
Yep.
I assume. Yeah. It looks fantastic. Like in a game that's already been looking great all the way through, just putting in this one new lighting effect in this environment that you've already been in for 6 hours or so at this
Yeah.
point. It really just hits you again, like how good it all looks. And I really liked that little
Yeah.
shift, just doing that one little thing to kind of make it feel like a bit
that's-
fresh again.
It was the sun going down, right? That's the sun going down and twilight and the sun sort of coming in. And that, for
Yeah.
me, was like, oh, fuck. Is it going to be night soon? Because the whole game has taken place during the day to this point, like a
Right.
snowy, wintry, sort of glary, featureless, blind sort of weather situation. But yeah, when it was like, oh fuck, is the sun going down? Am I going to have to play the rest of this game in the dark? That's a great ominous feeling for it to evoke.
It really works. There's one bit where there's a big lake and the water looks like shit for some reason. That stood out to
Yeah.
me. But because everything else just looks really great, especially
Yeah.
on the newer consoles. It runs at a pretty solid 60 all the time.
Yep.
Even with like ray tracing effects on. It dips
Yeah.
a little bit with that stuff on sometimes, but not in a crazy way.
Yeah.
It's really impressive from that point for sure.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
the water's a little weak, and there were like 1 or 2 little bits where I noticed some sort of dodgy textures. There's a bit where
Yeah.
you're like behind a building, and it's sort of near the water, so I think it's meant to be snow mixed in with like a little moss, and it just
Right.
was like
yeah.
which is hard because it's already like meant to be a pretty drab, murky texture, but it just looked a bit low res and a bit unfinished, which again
Yeah,
only
right.
sticks out because everything else is so perfect that like,
Exactly.
especially walking around that first mansion where the big tall lady is in, all of that, like that big opulent like gold everywhere, like
Or
it
like
just
feathered or whatever you call it,
Yeah.
the little embossed
Yeah.
walls and shit.
Even
It
just
looks
like
great.
seeing the like creases in a leather chair was like, that looks real.
Yeah.
That actually looks real. It's so detailed.
Cut to you like looking at your chair while playing it. Wow. I think that it feels a little nitpicky to even talk about like the shitty dialogue and the whatever, because everything in the game is so charming, like not in a sweet way, but like so compelling that, like, the combat being a little less sort of intricate than I maybe would have wanted is only a gripe because I really enjoy what's there, and like it feels really good to do. So I kind of wish it went further. The little bit, the story is stupid, but it's campy and cheesy and fun.
The overall story itself, I was fine with because of like the conventions of it being Resident Evil. It was just more the actual moment-to-moment dialogue. Even with some of the other characters, it just bothered me because it didn't feel camp. It felt kind of unfinished. And but I think overall it's really good too because it coming off the back of 7, which as we've talked about a bit before, which by the way, if you want to hear us talk more about Resident Evil, we've got a premium episode on Bandcamp where we talk about the whole series.
We've got a new one about Metal Gear Solid coming out on Tuesday as well. It's already there if you're on that tier on Patreon. There's a Metal Gear Solid one showing up this coming Tuesday.
The 18th.
That sounds right.
Okay.
It is right.
I guess that's why it sounded it.
Go to our website, by the way, filthycasuals.com.au. It's got a link to the Bandcamp, link to the Patreon. You get all that shit.
All sorts of links. Maybe we'll put some links to some fun memes.
Sure. Okay.
Our favourite search engines. That should come back. Websites having a links section. Would be great.
Sitemap.
But especially coming off the back of 7, where as we talk about in the premium episode about the series, before 7 came out, the series was in a little bit of a hole. People were kind of off it, and 7 kind of really brought it back. And there were the 2 remakes, so it is kind of back in favour with people. And a lot of times, what tends to happen with a lot of series, and I think Resident Evil is guilty of too. They do one that people really like, and they kind of misinterpret what people have really liked about that last one. Right. And then the follow-up kind of goes too far in one direction or doesn't quite get it right. And I think for the most part, this does a really great job of capitalizing what was good about 7 and what people liked about 7.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I thought it mostly is the same. But then little things like adding the merchant to just mix it up and have it not just be this even though that is what I really like about these games, is that you know that the weapon you have at any given time, you are on a course where the arsenal that you have is just what you're meant to have.
Right.
It's because it's just what you're finding in the environment.
Right.
I do really like that in the other ones, but then this change up to if you just want to save your money and just completely max out the shotgun and not worry about anything else, you can have a slightly different play experience to someone else. And I kind of all the things to just kind of change going forward in this one, I think that was a really smart decision to sort of differentiate it from 7 while still retaining a lot of what made that one great.
I agree, because I think my favourite thing about this game is the thing that they improved on most from 7, which is the level design is a kind of, you've got these different little areas that you'll go to, or littler areas, and then they're all kind of connected in a hubby kind of way. Me and my hubby loved playing this game. and that thing of getting those extra items, like you were saying, and going back to other areas and redoing the little bits there, it's like, God of War I really liked about that game, that it felt like that. There's a lot of games that do it that don't come to mind for me at the minute. It's not quite Metroid level stuff.
No.
But it's a very satisfying
because 7 had multiple buildings, but they didn't really link up in the same way in a kind of quote-unquote overworld, even though it's not quite that, but...
And you get these little treasure icons that show up on your map, and you get little bits of if you want to go hunt these animals that you need to cook meals at the guy, then they're here on the map. So it gives you little impetus to... a little bit of impetus to go and seek these things out. You move really slowly, so it takes you forever to get there.
Yeah.
But it's a very satisfying structure for the game. And I think that was my favorite thing. That and the Resident Evil kind of puzzles. It's got all of that stuff there. And when you're doing that stuff, it's really satisfying.
I've seen in reviews, and I feel like they bring this up in nearly every Resident Evil game, that the puzzles are just... quite easy and not too taxing, but I really like that about them.
I don't
really.
It's hard to just articulate what I felt about them, because it's all of the puzzles were basically once you figure it out, you just do that. It's very hard to explain why you don't like a puzzle, but it's No, you just like, and sometimes it's like, well, read the note next to this,
They're
and
all
it'll
room
tell you
escape
exactly
games.
how to do it.
Yeah.
They're basically those room escape style puzzles. Where
Right.
it's like a key is in a box, and the key goes to this box, and
Yeah.
you're just going through a series. Of
But
whatever.
much like the sort of not semi-Metroid-esque exploration stuff,
Yeah.
it's like, well, it's not quite a room escape game because it's a lot easier than I imagine those games are.
Right.
It's just sort of like, well, okay, now I know that I have to go to this room, get this thing, go to that room, put it back in. Like, you just... It's all very easy.
Or the
It's
answer
very
will
logical.
be on the
it's very
wall.
apparent.
Like there'll be a
Yeah.
riddle that's
I think-
like,
yeah.
hey, get the three sisters to face you or whatever.
Yeah.
I think I
Yes.
kind of agree with that, but I found it the enjoyable obstacle in the way that you found the combat, and I did it. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Like,
For me,
it's-
yeah.
for me, I was just like, okay, I just got to tick this off. Yes, exactly like you felt about the combat.
Yeah.
Because I think the reason I find it weird when reviews single that out about a new Resident Evil game where they'll go, oh yeah, the puzzles are, as simple as just looking at the solution on the wall. But it's like, they've always been that way in this series, I think. Like,
Yeah.
they're not making this to be, brain training or whatever. Like, they're not really trying to tax you. Like, you're right. Like, I think the approach is the same as the combat, where it's just meant to be this little thing that's there, and they want you to, like, quite easily get that dopamine hit of, oh fuck, how good does it feel hearing the sound of that roller door going up.
Yeah.
It's just a weird thing that reviews of these games always focus on when they've never set out to make a super taxing puzzle game, and they haven't in the past, and it's weird that people think that it's letting the series down. Certainly in the ones I've read, you see that as a bit of criticism when I think it's by design.
I really don't care about the series, so
Right,
I'm just
yeah,
playing it as
yeah.
a game that I want to enjoy, and it's at the point of like, I understand why you include puzzles in this kind of game. It increases the tension and it makes you feel satisfied when you solve them. But maybe I feel the way about them as you do with the combat, in the sense of like, well, if you're going to have a bunch of puzzles, make them good puzzles, or make them satisfying, or more complex, or more fun. Or don't include them at all. Like, let me explore this house and have scares and cutscenes and all that stuff, and don't have puzzles.
I do think sometimes they work contextually in like a, if you're in this big opulent mansion and it's like, well, it just makes sense that there would be a hidden door here where all you have to do is put this item on the thing where it's missing from, and then that's going to open the door. Like, if it's, for me, if it's like, it feels like it just makes sense for this environment to function in this way.
Yes.
But then sometimes when it is a little crowbarred in of like, hey, go all the way over here and then get this thing and then put it in that, it's like, why? Why would this room have this in it?
And I
Like,
think much like your issues with the combat increased as the game went on because there was more of it.
Right.
I had no issues with the puzzles in the castle, the initial castle. I had issues with every puzzle after that, basically.
So, like, the factory, you were like...
Factory was very frustrating, and then the other house with the... I don't want to spoil really anything, because it's all of my enjoyment from this game came from being presented with these fun new characters and fun takes on gothic horror tropes.
Yeah.
But there were a couple of locations where it was like a lot of puzzles, and it was like,
See, I started to really enjoy it because, like, I know what
Right.
the answer is, but I like walking between the two places to go and do it. And,
right.
like,
For me, it was like, this
Yeah.
is just a
those
fetch
boxes
quest.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
There's-
still-
I don't know why, but it's satisfying. in this
I would
game.
agree that I think the castle is the strongest puzzle area. Like, I think the castle is almost just this like perfect microcosm of what I like in Resident Evil, where it's like you've done a couple of the puzzle rooms and then you're in a new bit, and because you've opened a new bit out, there's going to be a couple of zombies in there. You're not going to be completely swamped by them, but you take them out and then you're back into just like, and then inevitably you hit a point where you feel like you've been in every room, but you still don't have that final thing. So the map system, as always, I mean, all the stuff that has always been great in these games is great. Like the very melodramatic little sting when you pick up an item,
It's
which
so
is
stupid.
so
Just grabbing a fucking coin off of the ground. It's like, Jill!
Yeah.
Scaring
all
the
of that
shit out
stuff,
you.
and like it hovering in midair in front of you for a second. It's like, oh, I guess this is just a relic of these being older games with older style and
It
older
made more
presentation.
sense when you were picking up like 4 pixels off of a mantelpiece that you couldn't quite see, and they'd be like, oh, it's a bust.
Right.
I guess this isn't an enormous bust.
It's funny that it's
Speaking of which, how about that vampire?
it's funny that it's a first-person perspective game, and yet, like when you use a key to open a door, the key just kind of floats in and
Yeah.
unlocks.
Yeah.
It's like, couldn't be bothered to animate the hand actually
Right.
doing that.
But it works for whatever reason. Like, there's problems with every aspect of this game, but them all kind of mixing into a pot. I reckon it makes the pace correct to have the puzzles and the combat in the way that they are and the exploration in that sort of mix.
Oh, and again, back to the merchant thing, you previously in these games, you would upgrade your inventory space by finding a new backpack or whatever out in the world. And this time it's just purely save up the money to get it. So you can really challenge yourself and just decide, I'm never going to buy the bigger bag, or like I always prioritized getting that. But again, that's a very funny like in-world inconsistency where you can run out of space to hold your guns because you don't have a big enough bag. But then there's a point later in the game where you pick up an object. Key objects don't count in towards your inventory space. And you have this object that is like the size of you that you're just able to like fit in and carry to another part of the map.
Well, maybe we should get into some more spoilery stuff for the people who want to hear it.
Yeah. I will say, overall, really enjoyed it. I do think it peaked at the castle. And it almost felt like everything after that I was like, this is fun, but it's not as good as that castle bit.
Right.
But a really fun game. 10 hours. I reckon I think I finished it in like 9.5 or something. Like it's not like 10 hours is an average probably.
The rough whatever. Yeah, I don't remember my exact.
And because weirdly, completely opposite to Last of Us 2, I was running through the whole game.
Right.
I was like, after a certain point, I was like, all right, this is an action game. This is a Bioshock or something.
Right.
I'm just going to run around everywhere. And
I think if the castle was your favourite bit, I'd say give the remake of 2 another crack. Right. Because it's scarier, but it's that same, it's that bit of the game done perfectly and done for an entire game.
Right.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. But yes, fun game. I recommend it to basically anyone.
Same.
Honestly,
I think it's great.
I liked it as a whole. I think I have little nitpicks with bits and pieces of it because I like it so much. I'm like, if this was cranked up to here, then this game would be amazing. But it's very, very good as it is.
Yeah.
And I think it is great on every console
Yeah.
as well.
Right.
I think it's a big recommend, and I think, I would agree that the only reason I'm being nitpicky is because the rest of it is so good, and because this is just a series that has some really great entries in it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard not to go in with like, this is what I personally like and want out of these games. And Capcom sometimes seem to have quite different thoughts about what they think a Resident Evil game is.
It's kind of nice though that every single one of them is quite different.
Yeah.
And you never really know what you're going to get from any given one of them.
I'm glad that there's as much of the stuff that I like in this one.
Yeah.
Because I have a feeling whatever they do next, I think that the next thing they do, they'll fuck it and they'll go.
Well, it's a good time to be, because it's good to hear that this is a good entry point basically to the series as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.